Dopesick is a brand new series on Disney Plus Hotstar that chronicles the opioid crisis that is currently plaguing America. Now, we got a chance to speak to the minds behind the show, Danny Strong, who wrote the TV series, and Beth Macy, the author of the book that it's based on. Check it out.
I think I can make this the biggest drug in the world.
I feel like every issue reaches a turning point when there is a critical mass of popular culture that seems to be addressing it on TV and movies, in books. It's one thing going after the bad guys, but I guess it's when you get hearts and minds, that's when change happens. And I'm curious as to whether or not the both of you think we're getting there or whether we're almost there with regards to the opioid crisis in America.
Well, a couple of years ago, we had a 90% treatment gap. That is, only 10% of people with opioid use disorder had managed to get care in the last year.
Right.
We've put billions of dollars towards it, and we still have an 88% treatment gap. So we're not coming very far very fast, and mostly that is because of stigma. That's because we still view it as a crime rather than a medical condition. And because we're also still going by Richard Sackler's playbook, which is to, quote, hammer the abusers. They are the culprits.
Right.
And then you see all of our victims on the ground being abandoned, which is pretty much just like what happens in real life. We hope that you come away at the end of the series with a real understanding, and not just an understanding of what happened back then when OxyContin was launched, but really to know the stories behind the bankruptcy issues and the worsening fentanyl crisis. You know, it can serve as it makes the opioid crisis understandable.
Yeah. No, Best Danny, I mean, your series sent me down a rabbit hole. I saw the first episode and then I bought your book, Beth. And then I finished that. I started reading Empire of Pain, which is the Patrick Radden Keefe book. I'm completely hooked. I come from a family of doctors, and everyone is now in my family is hooked on your show. Danny, I'm curious, when adapting something like this, how important is it to limit creative license in your dramatic impulses? Because you want to keep the story as factually true and accurate as possible, but then you're still making entertainment. I'm curious where you draw the line, because it becomes then very easy for people to pick it apart, right?
It doesn't have
the bad
to
guys.
So what I've learned in doing this is they pick it apart no matter what you do. So, I don't worry about the bad guys picking things apart. My goal is to tell something that where the essence and the macro is completely true, where anytime you show anyone doing something illegal or wrong or negative, that's fair and true. But at its core, are you telling the universal truth? You can fictionalize along the way to tell that universal truth, to try and tell it in a way that's as compelling and dramatic, exciting, or whatever genre you're trying to achieve as possible. It's sort of the good thing about scripted drama, right? Is that I'm not a documentary filmmaker. I'm not a nonfiction author, nor am I claiming to be. These are actors saying lines, and there's going to be fictionalization like there is in every nonfiction movie and nonfiction TV show in the history of the medium. So the question is, does it have integrity? Does it represent the truth? And that's what I'm guided by. And then at the same time, I'm trying to use that truth to tell as dynamic and compelling a story as I can.
There's an incredibly interesting part of this story, which I feel doesn't get enough airtime. And it's something you guys make a point to talk about in Dopesick. And that's the, I guess, manufactured lingo that goes along with something like this: breakthrough pain, individualize the dose, the fifth vital sign, all of that stuff, the pain chart. Can you talk to me about that? Because I think the semantics plays a very important role in convincing the public at large that, hey, this is legit.
Well, to me, that is the crime. That is the heart of the crime that's being committed, is that you've got a pharma company who's claiming a highly addictive narcotic is in actuality non-addictive. Now, this is not true. So what do they have to do to keep that lie going is they have to tell a lot of other lies along the way. And that is ultimately That's the criminality. That's the deception. That's the sin. That is the American nightmare that they have wrought on this country, is that those lies, breakthrough pain, pseudo addiction, right? That is what created one of the worst health crises in the history of the country. So to me, those phrases was in many ways the heart of the story, because it's the heart of the deception. We episode 4 is called pseudo addiction. That's the name of the episode. Because to me, it is the epitome of what Purdue did. Is they came out and they said, addiction does not exist. It's just the consequence of the underlying pain not being treated. So to cure pseudo addiction, you need to up the dose, right? And it's so diabolical. And then at the same time, it's also fascinating how it was successful. And I was fascinated by that. And I wanted to see, so how does that succeed? Because in 2021 or 2018, 19, when we were writing the show, it feels absurd, right? But at the time, in 1999, 2000, because of everything that was going on with the redefining the nature of pain treatment, there was a place for it where it actually was effective. So all of that ties into sort of the big long con of what Purdue Pharma achieved.
Beth, I was going to ask you a little bit about, I guess, the nuance of addiction, because it's not clear cut. And like you mentioned earlier, Purdue Pharma uses the argument, it's the same NRA argument, right? Guns don't kill people, people kill people. And I'm curious about that nuance and getting at it, because I think that's the message that hasn't got out into the world yet, about not blaming the abusers. How did you channel that in the book? I mean, was that something very difficult to do, and getting people to tell their stories? I know in your foreword you say, I've got as many people as possible to use their name, right?
Right. When I first started reporting back in 2012, hardly anyone wanted to go on the record. In fact, the only people I could get to go on the record was somebody who had already been on the front page for being arrested for selling the heroin that resulted in his private school classmate's death. But then as I years later went back and turned that original reporting into a book, there was almost no family that hadn't experienced it. Some people were still, I live in the South. Some people were still a little skittish about it. I had to hold their hands. Some people I had to read their quotes back to beforehand. But then I found, Tess's family, Tess's mother was so open. And I just went with the people who are more willing to tell their stories, because then you get, all I ask of people ever is to just, I'll tell you what I'm doing, you tell me what you're doing, and we'll keep the chains of communication open. And that almost always works.
There was a question I'm asking everyone I'm speaking to about who's working on the show. How did this and working on this change did it change your perception on medication?
Yeah, I remember I saw a doctor and she said, she was telling me about a new medication, and she said, but you don't have to worry, it's FDA approved. And I cringed a little bit, but I think that this story, I do think that it's unique in that a very unique thing happened here, which is that Purdue Pharma was granted this highly unusual, what turned out to be wrong wording on their label. Then the individual that approved that wording then went to go work for them 18 months later, with a $400,000 a year salary. So to me, there is what appears to be blatant corruption involved. I'm not distrustful of medication. In fact, I think one of the things that the Sackler family has done is they've set back pharmacology, and that they've created a sense of distrust with their actions towards medication in a way that will have consequences that we won't even be able to calculate. People not taking
medication. Seeing it already right now, like people are using our show as a way to be anti-vaccine.
Right. I was just going to say.
Yeah. And I think what's so different, if I were to do a TV show on the vaccine, it would be about the hero doctors that created it and saved the world, right? So I also think what separates the vaccine story so profoundly from the OxyContin story is that the vaccine, it's not FDA approved, created. It's approved all over the world, in countries that have far more stringent standards than the United States, in countries where economics are not the issue, people's health are the issue, right? So
Yeah.
I think it is literally the polar opposite of the OxyContin story in almost every possible way. But nonetheless, I understand that some of this hesitancy may have come from the OxyContin story in the U.S. The hesitancy that was going on with the vaccine, long before people knew our show existed, right? 8 or 9 months
absolutely.
ago. So I think that
unlike OxyContin, there's actually science behind the vaccine.
Yeah, there's actually studies. There's a study, right? Is there a study that showed less than 1% of people got addicted, Beth? I don't remember seeing that study.
Thank you so much. They're telling me to wrap, so I just want to say, beautiful show. Thank you so much for making it, Beth, Danny, and if I can fanboy for just a second, loved you since Buffy, man.
Uma, you're the best.
That's great work.
And I love your robot.
I love your
yeah, and
time. Yeah.
See you guys later.
Family, I said thanks for watching the show.
Yeah.
I will do. Thank you.
These people, my people, trusted me. I can't believe how many of them are dead now.
That was Danny Strong and Beth Macy. Check out Dopesick. It is currently streaming on Disney Plus Hotstar. Let us know what you think of the series. We've got other interviews as well. You can watch them all on our YouTube page. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family. You know what to do.